It is my pleasure to introduce to you formally Reverend Tony Altman, who you just heard bring us the word. He is the Associate for Vital Congregations. As he mentioned, he came from Minnesota to be here in sunny Florida. As he mentioned also, he has served in various ministry positions, including as a bivocational pastor for 10 years. He's been a chaplain with the local hospital for nearly 15 years, and he lives in northern Minnesota with his wife, Kristen, who's an ELCA minister, and their son, Kyle, who's in the 6th grade. So please help me welcome Reverend Tony Altman.
Thank you. It is a delight to be here again, and still, to have not been run off in the meantime. I want to kind of continue my sermon as we talk about growing through VCI, as we talk about the journey through VCI. The churches that went through this journey of the last 2 to 3 years, depending on whether you did the prep year or not, you were vulnerable for a long period of time and tenacious for a long period of time. You were open to what God was calling you to do in your communities and in your neighborhoods and in your congregations. I applaud you for that. The struggle comes when we get tired of having vulnerability. We tend to close off. When we get tired of being open, we tend to want to retreat once we found what we think is the way. So the encouragement today, the charge today to those going through the process and finalizing it today is to know that it is not final. That's why I've struggled to find words other than final or graduate or completed, because it's not a completion date. It's almost a rebirth date. The date that you are reborn into a new ministry of hearing God's will for the community around you and where God is leading you. It is not a call to retreat and be comfortable again for a few years. God is always calling and always active and always calling us into an active life of continual showing up and being open. It was Rumi, the ancient poet, who said that our job is not to seek love, but to seek the walls and destroy them that keep us from love. And that is our job as churches, is not to go out, not that we're creating barriers between us and love, but sometimes we have those barriers between how the community can feel God's love and what the church is giving. And sometimes that wall is there between the ministry and the mission and the needs and the wants. We need to seek down the places that are keeping others from experiencing God's love and break down those barriers. And I applaud once again, the congregations that have participated in VCI and the work that you've done to get to the point, and in the new life and the new ministry God is continuing to call you into. Thank you for being a part of VCI. Thank you.
So the one thing I hear over and over again about vital congregations is people saying, I really want to hear about what that process has been all about for the congregations that have participated. In the report from Church Transformation on page 13, you'll see a little overview of the congregations that have participated, have completed it, and the 5 congregations who have been through the whole process are here today to share with you. But we also have another 6 congregations that are in various phases of completing the process. And we will continue to work with them into 2023 to help them through that. We've had a lot of transitions happening in some of our congregations, some who have lost pastors to a new call, some who have lost pastors to death. And so it has put a lot of different, and then we've had COVID. Oh yeah, there's COVID as well. That has been a challenge. So, but we have these 5 congregations today that have made it through this process, and we wanted them to share with you what it was about the process that's been insightful, what it is about the process that has been challenging, and so that you all will get a little bit of a feel of what they have gone through and what they are prepared to enter into as they have completed their action plans. So I'm going to do this alphabetically. So I first invite up Martin Concepcion, who's the pastor at El Buen Vecino in Kissimmee.
Good morning, brothers and sisters. It is a true delight to be here and be able to share a little bit about our journey with Vital Congregations Initiative. VCI has been a true headache, a big one. For some reason, VCI has put in the heads of the people in the church that we have to be out in the community. For some reason, they said we need leadership training. And we need to re-energize these people with these other activities and not stay within the 4 walls of the church, but invite the people in. And more than that, let's go out and meet the people. Wow. Huge headaches. A lot of logistics go into it because we have to really think what we are going to do and why are we doing what we're doing. And it helps us put into perspective God's call onto our hearts. Some of the changes that has happened at El Buen Vecino since VCI is adaptive changes. We are a predominantly Spanish-speaking congregation. Our bulletin is in Spanish. All our PowerPoints are in Spanish. Everything is in Spanish. Our children's sermon is now in English. We have a summarized bulletin in English for non-Spanish speakers, especially for our children and our teens who predominantly speak English, so they could be able to better participate and understand what's going on in worship. Being able to listen to the people and the needs out in the community, we have reinstated our couples ministry so that we could be able to focus on what it means to be husband and wife. What does it mean to be in partnership with someone? Being able to be together as a family. We also discovered the need to address mental health. And we have created a ministry where we provide forums where people could come in and learn about mental health. And not only that, but engage in activities that will be able to be therapeutic in nature. And being able not only to learn about mental health, but also about our personal faith and our journey in that sense. We have grown into lots of headaches because we are now dreaming what we did not dare dream before. We are dreaming to see the church grow, the community come in, and being able to be at peace with people just coming and going as they need to. Finding a place of hope, a place where we could just be together in fellowship and know that we are in a safe, non-judgmental place. And being able to share the good news each and every day. For that purpose, we're trying to look at ways where we could build a structure where we could provide safe havens for people, especially young women who've been thrown out of their homes because they're now pregnant and not having a place to go to that is safe. We would like to house them and help them grow and be able to lend that hand so that they can move forward in life until they have a place of their own. We would love to have a place where we build bridges with the community that has been at odds with the religious institution. We would like to continue to journey through life, embracing people. We are a church with 10 nationalities, and we want to grow that. We want to welcome everyone who would like to worship there. Our worship is blended, so we have traditional, contemporary, we have a little bit of everything. But most of all, a loving heart to share with one another and with everyone. Thank you.
Next up, we have Reverend Mario Bolivar, who is at First Eustace.
Buenos días, iglesia. Dios te bendiga. There's a story found in the Synoptical Gospels, the young ruler who approaches Jesus, right? And he says, what do I have to do to achieve, fill the blank? And Jesus says, well, you have to do this and this. And the young ruler, hey, I've done that since I was like this. Well, you have to consider other things. And the young ruler continued to push the issue with Jesus. And at one moment, Jesus says, well, you have to sell everything that you have and follow me. And that's the one thing that the young ruler couldn't do, right? And I think Jesus did it on purpose to make sure that the young ruler understood that he could not achieve it, but it was a journey. Much is the process of vitality. I am the installed pastor of Eustace Presbyterian Church. By all measurements, we are thriving, successful congregation. And a lot of those things, we beat our chest for it and says, oh, look, all the things that we have been able to accomplish. Every Friday, even during the pandemic, we were feeding over 200 people. During the pandemic, we enhanced our mission with the people who experience homelessness in Eustace. We actually decided to transform an area of our church, what we call the cottage, into a recovery house. And there's a lot of things that we can do to beat our chests. And yet, Jesus reminds us that it is not I who do, but the Spirit that lives in you that is capable of doing this. So what are the things that you have to let go? And el pastor Martín is right. What a headache to consider not the good that you have done, but how can you enhance. So while there is a sort of celebration today because we have completed much of the process, now is the time where the work really begins. Now that you have the knowledge and the experience, the acknowledgement of all the things that we're supposed to do. We learned that while we are a welcoming congregation, we are not as welcome as we could be. We are a generous congregation, but we are not as generous as we could be. We realize that there is a lot of things that we do for people or on behalf of people, and yet there is not a lot of things that we do with people. We learn that there's a lot of things that we feel that we ought to do, that we're called and inspired to do, and yet we have been failing to recognize what is already happening in the community, that we could just go and lend a hand and be a brother. So if you haven't done Vital Congregation Initiative, Vitality teaches you, gives you a different lens. See, I cannot see. Now I can. That's what Vitality does. If your church hasn't participated, I recommend it because you will be awakened to all the journey that is still ahead of you. Not that you're not vital, but that there is so much that you are yet to unlock. We learn that our neighbors are busy. We learn that there is often non-Christians doing the work of the gospel. We learn that often what people need is a space. One of the greatest gifts of Eustis is that we are a downtown church with a large property, a large building. Actually, one of the things that came out of Vitality is for us to put our campus to the use of people, to be the more tech advanced place, and it's more affordable. We are inviting our community to use and get our carpets dirty. We're inviting children to paint our walls in different colors. Imagine, for example, inviting your community to come and abuse of your building. Imagine what your property committee was going to say for the foot traffic on the carpet. I mean, what's the point of arriving to the end with a wonderful building? So that's what we're doing. The Presbytery was great and assisting us with grants. Did you know that the Presbytery is giving money? Not really. You have to follow a process and all that. But there is resources out there. My friends, what's the point of living a wonderful life and arriving with a great body if you don't use it? So, we are a healthy congregation, and we have learned that you are healthy not only because of the people in the pews or the money in the bank, but they are different lenses that you can technically put on your glasses. See, the left is money, the right is people. But often what you can do is to swap them. You can put them in different places. My friend, that's the invitation of Vitality. To enhance what you already have. Not for the sake of your success, but for the sake and success of the kingdom of God. Amen. Let me remind you of one thing that has been the challenge for the session and for the deacons and for the leadership of the church. We are in Lake County, and if that means anything to you, you know the challenges that come from that. And yet, the biggest discovery, the reminder, is that we are not called to build castles, but one kingdom. Know your neighbors, know your friends. Go from there. Thank you.
One of our congregations that had that time of transition is Pineda Presbyterian in Melbourne. Through good lay leadership and the coming on of interim leadership, they have made it to the finish line. And so Reverend Julianne Whipple is going to share about their experience of the process.
Well, I'd like to say I had their experiences, but I did not. As an interim, I'll be honest, I came into a church that is on its way down. Our median age is around 75 years of age, and I didn't look at them as if they were 75. I looked at them as if they were my age or younger. And so I came in very excited about a VCI because I thought, oh, great. these people are excited. So I bought into VCI thinking, yay. But all I heard for the first month was, oh, the last pastor made us do this, and can we get out of it now that you're here? And we don't really want to do this, and we've already filled out enough forms. So I thought, okay, first glass cleaning there was, gee, maybe they're not as interested in VCI as I thought. But I kept on with well, it looks pretty good to me, and we have Cheryl, and in my years at Presbytery, Cheryl knows everything. She's the great and powerful Oz behind the curtain. You know, she's gotten tired of me sending her emails. Oh, it's Julianne again. But with VCI, I thought, well, Cheryl's in charge. I'll just dump it on Cheryl and a couple of other people at church. And then we went ahead and moved forward. So I pushed all the items and made them fill out their forms and answered their grumblings while I kept dancing around and trying to get everybody enthusiastic. Well, the results came back, and I was very excited because in my interpretation of the results, oh my goodness, we've got this giant community. Not only that, what I didn't know when I took the interim pastorate is that Pineda Presbyterian Church has the same amount of acreage as the largest Presbyterian church in the United States. We might have the smallest congregation, but we have the largest piece of property. So I thought to myself, well, there it is. We're here to make this a community church, just like you guys said. I'm all excited. Let's do this. So I thought, well, how am I going to make them do that? Well, then we get to the part where Cheryl comes in after church, and I'm like, Cheryl, I don't really want 2 Sundays after church because it's football season, and I prefer to watch the games. She says, no, we got to do it this way. All right. So I talk everybody into these 2 lunches. And of course, the first lunch, they decided it was going to be cold. We had soup. And that Sunday, I think it was 98 degrees outside. And unlike this gentleman here, I like it cold. And I offered to trade him my job for his job during the 5-minute session. So there we have us sitting there, and the first one was going through the items. And one of the members who was one of the founding members of the church sent me a note and said this should not have to be done with the entire church, and got up and walked out. And I was like, yeah, I said I didn't want to be pushing boulders uphill for a year, and it looks like that's what I'm doing. So then the following week comes, and much to my surprise, as God, for me, is the author of surprises, we had the congregation there. I didn't fill anything out. This is the brainstorming session, and they're all sitting there. Keep in mind, they have walkers, hearing aids, they have all kinds of accoutrements that they need to listen and pay attention. And poor Cheryl had to repeat herself 8 times. No, those red dots are for a minute there, I thought I was at a senior citizen home because she's trying to play a game. But wait, this is the God moment. These people at all these different tables, with no input from me, no inspiration from me, no guiding from me, they did their brainstorming sessions at what was most important. And when they look, I have goosebumps. Oh, anyone who's heard me preach knows when I get goosebumps, it's a God moment. They got up there and put their little dots on what was most important to them, and what they came up with were the 3 things that were most important to me, which I was floored. The first one was clear the property, make it useful for the community. That was number one over a massive, it wasn't like 5, 4, 3. It was 22 to 15 to. The second thing, which I have been called on the carpet for not being nice enough, is the website. That was the second thing that these people know needs to be changed in order to reach out to the community. And then the third thing was the preschool, which I had already secretly, sorry Dan and Cheryl and everybody that's on Presbytery that I'm not doing it the right way, I had already secretly been doing character ed lessons for the preschool on my own without notification. Those were the top 3 items that they came up with from brainstorming, from looking at what was important through the VCI results that they got, from knowing who your neighbors are. That is what the congregation came up with. And as was said by both folks, well, maybe you got it too good. But the hard part is beginning. 2 weeks ago, we had a session meeting, and I wanted to share all the great stuff that was going on because of what the congregation wanted. And the session just want to be, they forget the reformed and reforming part. They're stuck on the pharisaical, we got to do it this way, which that's okay, and I get that, and that's important too because we are Presbyterians. But we must remember reformed and always reforming. And these people, God forbid that I'm saying this in public, and I'm sure I'm going to get a note about it, they're not 20. They want to see this done now. They don't want to wait till we have 25 meetings to get it taken care of. So much so that after that meeting, I called Dan and said, I think I got to leave. I can't do this anymore. And to be honest with you, I felt really strongly about that until this past week when someone contacted one of the elders and said, I will pay to clear that land and make the path. So VCI works. It takes some work trying to get your congregation and your elders to understand that your elders are not your congregation just because they look old. They are like young, beautiful, vital human beings. And I think part of the problem in our churches that are older is the pastors come in and they act like these people are done. And my Bible says you're not done until God calls you home. And I believe this congregation wants to see the beauty and the change and wants to live up what God has called them to do. So in closing, I highly recommend VCI. I highly recommend keeping it on the board and not letting things keep you from following through with what your congregation really, really is requesting that has come out of their discernment with God and what they feel called for their congregation to do in our communities. Thank you.
Rockledge Presbyterian is another one of the congregations that has completed the process, and I invite Reverend Sandy Lacey up to tell about the congregation's experiences and her experiences.
Good morning. I have news for you. Change is hard. You're not surprised, right? You're not surprised. Change is hard, and sometimes you don't even know that you need to change. And the good thing about VCI is that it kind of puts it front and center for you. So we have learned some things in this process, 2-year process. We began with preaching and Sunday school lessons or Bible study lessons about what it means to be a vital congregation, the 7 marks of what it means to be a vital congregation. We did a survey in which, shockingly, we discovered that we're really wonderful at caring for each other and not so good at taking God's message into our neighborhoods and out into the world. So I don't think that we're alone in that. As congregations, that we do pretty well in taking care of one another. We find it difficult to be open and vulnerable by taking God's message to others. Outside of the 4 walls of the church, meeting people where they are. And so with that requires a bit of change. And so we have been working on that, and we've been working on coming up with ideas about how we can do that. And the ideas have been anywhere from something big, like how can we partner with local hospitals and our local schools in a way that will support educators who are struggling at this stage, and who are, as my friend in the pew there would say, who are resigning left and right because of a number of issues. And so how can we help our children and our educators? How can we support them better? That's a big project. It's also a big project to think about how we can support our medical staff in the local hospitals. They're a neighbor of ours. How can we do that? How can we help senior citizens in nursing facilities that are near us who are feeling alone and who don't have people who support them? Any number of big projects. And then there are the ideas that really seem to give some energy, which is things like, we're in this beautiful area right on the Indian River, and we have all kinds of people who ride their bikes right by the church and who run right by the church and who are looking for water to drink. Could we put in a water fountain for those people? Simple things. In talking with the local runners group, that was an idea that sprang forward, and so we've had our Boy Scouts that our church sponsors say, oh, I want to do an Eagle project, and I will help you put in a water fountain. Just simple things, ways that we can partner with the community to help meet needs, get to know those businesses that are right around us, and understand their perception of the church and what we're about. So all kinds of things that we have learned through this process. Are we implementing every one of the ideas that were presented and thought through? No, not yet. But what we can do is build up our committee structures a little bit better so that those people who are already feeling a little overwhelmed with the work that they have always done, and we can't give it up, to bolster their committees so that they have the energy to do some new things as well, and maybe evaluate some of the things that we have always done in the past that perhaps those aren't spirit-inspired, but more tradition-inspired and familiar, and it may not be what God is calling us to be and do in the future. It is a process that at times is frustrating, I'll be honest, and some of the terminology in it is a little hard to communicate well. Outward incarnational focus. Explain that to your average layperson in the pew. And so, as pastors who are trying to lead this, we are responsible to try to make it accessible to people and to say, we have done things well in the past. I wonder how we can improve. I wonder if there's some other things that in this change that is happening in our culture around us, I wonder if there's some other things that would be beneficial and just as relevant in this day and time compared to 20 years ago. And so it is an opportunity for pastors to learn a little bit more and to be able to communicate effectively. It is also an opportunity for a congregation to wonder about where they've been, because there's an opportunity to look at your history, and then to do some wondering about where God may be leading you in the future, and then to kind of put some nuts and bolts on that. What does it look like? So there's something for everyone in this process.
Last but not least is the church that actually completed the process first. And the interesting thing is that for a majority of the time, they were without a pastor. And it was the lay leadership that actually moved it forward, which I think is an exciting statement about the process as well. And I invite the clerk of St. Cloud, Laura Cruz, to come forward and talk about the experience of being involved in vital congregations.
Thank you, Cheryl. Hello, everyone. They are a tough act to follow, let me tell you. And they're pastors, so they've been trained to do this. I am not. So please put up with me. I am clerk of session for St. Cloud, have been for many years, ruling elder and head of the finance committee. And just like everybody in our little congregation, we all wear many, many hats, especially now that we've been almost a year without a pastor. So we keep going. So everyone talked about their successes. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the process, because if you know me at all, I'm the one who goes behind the elephant with the brush. Does the budget, does all of that. So we started in, someone has to do it. So we started in July of 2021, and Pastor Hugh came to us and said, we really want to do this. And the session said, really? We're really, really busy, and you want us to do one more thing? And we talked about it, and we decided, yeah, that's a good idea. And of course, the carrot in front of the donkey was that we are looking for pastors, and we really do need to decide who we are and where we want to go. And this was a great way to do that. So after the session approved it, we did what all good Presbyterians do. We formed a committee. And so each of the committee members was given the tasks: the church history, the congregational survey, the community survey, the 10-year statistics, and the demographics. And we divided that up and went on our way to do that. Church history wasn't so hard because St. Cloud Presbyterian Church was the first church in St. Cloud and was founded in 1910. So not too long ago, we had our 100th year anniversary. And when we had that anniversary, we did a big flow chart of all the history. We found it, and we used it. Congregational survey took a little selling to the congregation. It's like, well, who wants to know? Or who's going to judge us? We said, no, this is all internal. It's just finding out about us. And remember, we're going to be looking for a pastor. Okay, carrot in front of the donkey. So actually, we had terrific response. We actually had a good person who was motivating everyone, made sure everybody got a survey, and went and made sure he got it back from everybody and sent it on. And that was really very good, because the congregation was starting to get really involved. The 10-year statistical report, we took all that information from our annual reports to the PC, and the demographics, Christina Grimwald, thank you, pulled them up. And if you have not asked for demographics of your area, you really should, because there's just a terrific amount of information in there. The community survey, we did first what was called a windshield survey. We drove around in concentric circles around our church. Now, our church is in an old, historic area of St. Cloud, and around it are older homes. Most have been remodeled, nicely kept, but quite small. Working people, if they're children, you never see them. They're inside. I don't know where everybody goes. But we circled around. We found social services, playgrounds, hospitals, schools, all those, even transportation, all right there. As the circle got wider, we got into the area that 30 years ago, even 20 years ago, used to be ranches filled with cattle and orange groves, and now there are thousands of houses. In the past 10 years, the population has more than doubled. All these new single-family homes, huge areas. And then also, there's a Del Webb community that's being built, full of us retirees who have a little bit of money, you know? There's all that, lots of variety in what we had to address. So we had our first congregation meeting, workshop. We had it after service. We locked the doors, they couldn't escape. And we fed them lunch. But actually we got a lot of interest. A lot of them were really surprised about the demographics, the fact that everyone knows it's growing. We've seen the houses. But who was filling those houses, what the age groups were, what the education was, what the ethnicity was. That was a big eye-opener. And also, you know, this historic thing, they got to post their history on the spreadsheets and all of that. But they also were a little disappointed about the statistical 10 years for the church, because like all of us, we have lost members. It's not a growing church. We wish it were. And so when we had our last workshop, we talked about those things. How can we reach out? We have a lot of outreach. Our vitality scores were really good, but our outreach, our evangelism, not so much. We have found that we needed to work more with the community, because although we were doing a lot, feeding people and lunches and dinners and all of that other people were too. There's a lot of social services in Osceola County, and we needed to coordinate with them, so we weren't duplicating efforts, and we were making sure people were covered. We've also tried to reach out. We've gotten all the local websites for the neighborhoods so we can put our ads in there. But that is our biggest challenge. Our biggest challenge is trying to reach all those new communities filled with houses of people who don't come to church. And if anyone's got any better ideas, I'd sure like to hear them. But it did wake up the congregation as to where we needed to go and how we needed to get there. And it really opened all of our eyes as to who our community really was. So if you haven't done it, give it a try. If you got any questions, give me a call. Thank you.
So guess what? We're going to continue with the congregations that haven't completed the process yet, but we're also opening up a second wave for new congregations to buy into the program and to the initiative. So for beginning in January through about August of next year, we're going to be trying to introduce to those of you who have not participated in Vital Congregations what it's all about. And today in the activity room, there's a little display. There's also an overview flyer that gives you a bit about the process. You've heard different people speak to it already, so I won't go into it drudging through each phase of it, but I'm happy to go over the specifics for those of you who are interested. So that in fall of 2023, we will officially start the second wave, and you're going to fast track. We're going to get you through in 1.25 years with any kind of luck, and the target time to try to conclude is around the end of 2024. I want to just say a couple of things that I wrote notes The first thing is, this is not a program that the Presbytery tells you what to do. You all, as a congregation, each congregation comes up with what it is you feel called to do, based on your discernment about yourselves and about your neighbors, and how those two things come together. The second thing is, you've probably heard, the congregations can be at any level of vitality. We have some that are already very vital and feel like, but we still have room to grow. There are others who are at a lower level of vitality. They need this to revive, and one of the outcomes of the process can even be to determine that it is time for you to allow your congregation to die or to be resurrected in a new way. So I will let you know that as well. And Katie Steinberg is going to do a little commercial, I'm giving her a little preview, in the church development report time about the resources that would be available to you if you participate in Vital Congregations for all these wonderful initiatives that you all come up with. So I encourage you to be part of this if your congregation isn't already involved. I think you can hear that it has been an amazing process for a lot of folks. It will make you work, it will give you headaches, and sometimes folks will grumble and moan, but in the end, it will help you determine where it is that God is leading you. And I invite Tony back up. He is going to offer a challenge to our graduating congregations.
Can I get the name of those two gentlemen over there? I want to be sure to put their headache comment in their file. No. Yeah.
Would you all come forward, and stand up here near Tony?
In just a minute. I'll invite you up in just a minute. Go ahead. I wanted to add to the conversation just briefly about the process of VCI. Not to, as Cheryl said, drudgingly get into it, but the way I began to define it as I tried to digest it and then be able to share it with others was through cooking. I love to cook. I grew up in a house with 3 siblings, and my mom said, if you complain about the meal, you got to cook the next meal. And I learned how to cook because I complained a lot. But I really developed a flair for it, and I really enjoyed it. And I still am the main cook at our house. And we used to watch the TV show Chopped. And it's a really good show. And the basic premise is you have 4 chefs. Each chef gets a basket of ingredients, 5 random ingredients. First round, they have to make appetizer, then a main course, then a dessert. And they're given a basket of 5 ingredients that are completely random and weird and wild. And they just have to include all of the ingredients. They don't have to include a certain amount. They just all have to be present. And VCI is kind of like that. We give you the ingredients, the basket full of ingredients that are the 7 marks, and say these 7 marks are important to include in whatever you're making. You are the experts, you're the chefs, you get to decide how much of outward incarnational focus do you have? How much of these other things do you have? How little do you have? And so it's about going back to your communities, serving the communities of worship, and preparing this dish using the 7 ingredients. So it's more about you guys being the experts rather than anybody else trying to tell you what to do. So I just thought that was a perspective that might help in understanding the process, because it's not a top-down or it's more community-led. So if you would all come up now, that'd be great. Just on the stairs is fine.
Okay.
Let us pray. Gracious and almighty God, God of wholeness, God of brokenness, God of all of us. We thank you for the places that you have broken in our communities through the process of VCI, broken open and exposed to your love in new ways that have allowed these congregations to see you and encounter you in ways they may not have before. God, I thank you for these congregations, for the guts that it took to sign up and risk not knowing the future to find out what God wants. I thank you for these communities that have done that and for the ways that you have enriched them. God, I pray that you would continue to watch over them, continue to guide them, and continue to go before them to prepare a way for them. I pray these things in the name of your Son. Amen.